All right, CNT120, Chapter 1 Lab. We just left off looking at the TCP information in our Wireshark. And you notice I didn't close it because we're going to continue using Wireshark for a couple more minutes. Now, real quickly, Layer 1 so far was our patch cable. Layer 2 was our network card along with the MAC address. Layer 3 was our IP address or our IP address settings, anything related to that. Layer 4, there's TCP and UDP. We focused in on TCP as our example because that's the one that gets used for making sure everything gets numbered and accounted for and everything gets delivered to the receiver's machine. And things like email, things like web pages, TCP gets used at layer 4 to do that. So we spent time looking at TCP and then these port numbers in here. And specifically, we're looking at 80 because we're looking at web traffic. All types of protocol traffic have an associated port number with them. So we ended up looking at 80 because we were looking at web traffic. Now, the last section here, we're going to look at application layer data. You notice we jumped from layer 4 to layer 7 because a lot of times layers 5, 6, and 7 get lumped together. They all tend to kind of work together, so they tend to kind of get lumped together. And if you remember when we were talking data encapsulation, data segments, packets, frames, bits, the upper 3 layers all get called data, if you will. So we're going to look at the top 3 layers together in this section. We're going to look at the Wireshark packet we captured, the HTTP data, and we're going to use that to take a look at this upper layer data, if you will. So back in Wireshark, we have this HTTP packet that we have. So again, I'll double click on it to open it up in a new window. I'll close all my headers for a second. In here, we saw Ethernet. That's layer 2. And we actually do see the MAC addresses here. And actually, if I open up real quickly, I see the source MAC address and the destination MAC address, where it was coming from and where it's going to. I'll close that. IP header, I do actually see who sent it and where is it going. Who sent it and where is it going. I'll close that IP header. If I look at the TCP header, like we said, who sent it, in this case, is coming from my browser. And where is it going? That was going to the web server. I'll close that. Now I'm going to look at HTTP. Now with HTTP, we were trying to request a web page. And I'm going to see some upper level data in here, if you will. And I even see things like, hey, this is trying to go to an Amazon web server. I'm using Firefox. I'm trying to go to Amazon web server. There's actually some upper layer data in here to be communicating with this web server. So right here, if I retrace my steps, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 7. And if I look in here, I actually do see when I highlight layer 7, it actually shows here is all that upper layer data in there. If I look down here at Ethernet, there's the Ethernet header. Right there, it shows it. Here's the IP header. Here's the TCP header. And then the rest is my HTTP data. That is my upper layer data. And that's why we said before, we have the data and then we keep adding these headers almost like Lego bricks onto the front. And that's what we're seeing. Here's the HTTP data, and then the TCP header gets added. There it is. Then we have the IP header added. The rest is still there. Then the Ethernet header gets added. So this right here, my HTTP data, is my layer 7 data from this chunk of data moving across the network, from this packet moving across the network. My HTTP is my layer 7 data. So right here for this part of my lab, I want to make sure I record that. So this time I think I'm just going to take these and I'm going to copy them to my notepad. And let's go over here and we'll say layer 7 results. And let's do this. I'm going to put them in there. What header field for layer 2? That's my Ethernet header. What header for layer 3? That's my IP header. Again, there's my Ethernet header. There's my IP header. My layer 4 was my TCP header in this case. And over here, my layer 7 is my HTTP. And now I'm seeing that data encapsulation that we read about. And now just as a quick side note, actually before I go any further there, make sure you have those, and I'm going to make sure I save that file, make sure I save that updates. So right now I should have up here my MAC address for layer 2 plus this netstat. Layer 3, I should have my IP address, dynamic IP address, as well as my ping. Layer 4, I'm going to have just my port numbers because I looked at my TCP header. And then layer 7, I'm going to have kind of listed out all my headers. So I'm seeing all 7 layers of data, if you will, represented. We know some are combined. But there is all my layers represented with this chunk of data. Now, if I go out here real quickly before I close this out, I'm going to get rid of my filter a second. So I'll click the X. And if I were to look at, let's see if there's some other data down here. This will probably be mostly my web traffic. But let's see if I can see some other data in here real quick. Let's try one of these. What do we get in here? No, that's UDP. Let's see if there is... There we go. Let's do it that way. If I grab a piece of DNS that's here, what I find is I have an Ethernet header, IP header, UDP header, DNS. I have all 7 layers represented, but I have layer 2 Ethernet, layer 3 IP, layer 4 UDP, and you'll see it's a very small header because DNS information, remember UDP is connectionless, it's just packet and send it. So UDP is getting used for my DNS because I need the DNS information quickly, and I'm kind of clapping quickly in the background here. DNS is like, get it quickly, get it quickly, get it quickly. So here, when I look at this DNS data, I see a UDP header as opposed to that TCP. So as I start looking at other protocol traffic, I will see some different header fields based on what that particular protocol needs. In this case, DNS needs a fast layer 4 protocol to just get the information there. All right, make sure you save your text file here. What I'm going to do now, I have a review here on all your layers for you that could be helpful. I'm going to make sure all those pieces are there, which I just did a couple seconds ago with you, and I'm going to make sure I submit this to D2L. So out here on your D2L, we'll go to the Dropbox, and for your first lab, open up your Chapter 1 lab here. Actually, let me do it this way for you. This will look similar to what you have. I'll open this folder here. Down here is an option to add a file. I will do add a file. I will go browse for that. So I'm going to go here, Brown 120 Chapter 1 lab, say open. I will add that. And then once it's added here, this allows me to add more files if I needed to do that. Then I will do a submit. And then your lab will be submitted. Okay? And this literally gets submitted into a folder with that literally there's a little folder for each one of you, and your file goes into that. So I'll even know, I even know it's yours even if you don't put your name on. I'll know that's your file. All right, I'm going to exit that. I'm not going to submit the file to myself, but that's what you'll do to submit your Chapter 1 lab. And I'm always going to encourage you guys to do that before you leave the lab room. That way it's done, it's in on time, and you don't have to worry about it. You may want to, before you leave, take your data file, the file from your lab here. Oop, there's my notepad file. And you might want to save it into like your Google Drive. You know, keep a little folder for CNT120 and save this in so you have a copy of your lab results as a just in case. I would not count on it being on this PC when you come back in the lab room the next time. So you might want to copy this onto like your Google Drive or something like that and keep this text file. Alrighty, there is the Chapter 1 lab.